Well, hello again. We are in Hablemos de Bitcoin, a podcast that is focused in Bitcoin, created by Satoshi in Venezuela. Today, we're going to talk with Adam Back. That's why I'm talking with you in English. You know that we are always talking Spanish, but we are going to having to talk about Bitcoin, proof of work, mining, and many other topics. But before, we are going to have a message for our show sponsors. Bitcoin is sponsored by Leden.io, a suite of services that help you earn more Bitcoin and digital dollars. Leden products would let you earn interest, ask for USD loans, and get credits to buy more Bitcoin. Their savings account in USDC and Bitcoin in cooperation with Genesis would give you the best rates in the market, working with one of the more prominent and known institutions in the industry. Leden has an exclusive service called B2X that will use your Bitcoin to take a credit and buy the same amount of Bitcoin. And if you need dollars, but you don't want to sell your Bitcoin, you can get a Bitcoin backed loan in 24 hours and you will not need to sell. Do you want to put wings on your Satoshis? Learn more at Leden.io. Remember to visit their website to know the rates. And now we're going to have a message from Hodl Hodl, that is a P2P market with no KYC and not custody of your funds. You will be transacting in a private way using multi-signatures of Bitcoin protocol. You will also have the option to use their Leden service that works in the same way without KYC, with no custody, and in a user-friendly way. Hodl Hodl. And finally, Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the easiest way to live through your Bitcoin. Remember that you will find almost 300 different options to buy gift cards through the platform. So yes, it is easy to live with Bitcoin thanks to Bitrefill. And well, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Well, here we are with Mr. Adam Back. Thanks for your patience, Mr. Back. And also thanks for the people that are with us today. How are you, Mr. Back?
Good. Let's have me on.
Your mic is funny again, but no problem. And well, I want to ask you a lot of different things today, but let's start with something related to the present moment of Bitcoin. Since in a few days we are going to have Bitcoin as legal tender in a country that is El Salvador. So I want to have your thoughts on this regard. What do you think, Mr. Back?
Yeah, I mean it's a very fascinating and surprising thing that a whole country is offering Bitcoin as a second legal tender. So in terms of, people talk about hyper Bitcoinization, but in terms of a step towards that kind of thing, countries adopting it is something people wouldn't have expected even a few years ago, I think.
Okay, El Salvador was really unexpected in this this moment, but yes, we are really aware to see what will happen there. Well, we can go to the early days of Bitcoin, and I want to bring Halfini to the interview. So, since yesterday was the 7th year since he passed away, so I want to ask you a little about the topics that you talk and discuss with Hal, since you said in interview that you didn't meet him in personal life, but you enjoyed his creative mind and also to discuss with him. So what kind of topics did you guys discuss in that early days?
Well, mostly about privacy technology, like remailers and how to make them more private, or how to prevent different kinds of attacks. There were several generations. He implemented the first one, actually, that involved encryption by integrating PGP, and he was one of the early, I think the first kind of developer on the PGP project. And he was always somebody that was interested in focusing on the technical. I think he was interested by the philosophical benefits of having more control and privacy, but he wasn't getting tied up in political arguments. He was focusing on how do we do something about it. So very constructive. And yeah, so also spent quite a bit of time talking about electronic cash and proof of work and anti-spam, and he made his own implementation. So there were a few different ideas for how to make an electronic cash system, including B-Money and BitGold by Wei Dai and Nick Szabo, respectively. And he made his own one called RPAL, Reusable Proof of Work. So, I mean, like other people interested in this stuff, we were mostly talking on the mailing list, but we also had some kind of email exchanges about different things related to this. And I remember he emailed me to see what I thought about the RPAL design, which he was implementing. And it was pretty cool. It was an innovative idea using trustworthy computing, so a way for a CPU to sign what code it's executing, so you can have confidence that you can trust it to some extent. So it used Hashcash for mining, and it would send you a signature of the code it was running and a JORM style electronic cash token, and he ran that for a while. So that's cool.
Okay, and you already mentioned the Hashcash, and that's the next question that I have, because you are the inventor of one of the key parts of Bitcoin functions and system. And so I want to ask you a little about the motivation behind this solution, why to build something like this proof of work system, and how it is used in Bitcoin system.
Yeah, so how I came to think about it is I was operating Remailer at the time, for a number of years, and it's a way for people to post, well, to email each other with anonymity and to post on Usenet, like discussion forum, anonymously also. And it seemed like people would spam through it, like not even commercial spam, but just random numbers and things. We were guessing, like people operating Remailers and on the cypherpunks list were guessing they were doing it to annoy system administrators to try and get them to, sort of restrict privacy options, something like that. Anyway, it was a bit of a nuisance because the discussion forums were broadcast, so it would use a lot of bandwidth in total and make Remailers unpopular for people that weren't interested in privacy. So I thought about technically how to stop that kind of spam or make it harder to do. And usually at the time, I mean, there was a lot of commercial spam in those years, and it was a real problem for people who operate mail servers. And the usual mechanism they use is to block IP addresses of rogue mail servers or block email addresses. And of course, you can't do that with a Remailer because it's the sender is anonymous, so there's nothing to block. And so I had to approach it in a different way. So I thought, well, what is the real problem for spam? One of the problems is that it's free to send mail. And so I happened to be reading about birthday hash collisions on the Cycrypt Usenet discussion forum, and thinking about these Remailer issues coincidentally at the same time. And it occurred to me that this birthday collision of a hash function is almost impossible to create because it's so expensive. But if you had one, if you had a collision, everybody would be immediately able to verify it. So it struck me this is a kind of useful building block. So I try to make it, modify it so that it would be possible to spend a minute creating a mini proof, like a mini collision. And so I arrived at this kind of partial hash collision. And actually, there's another example of how Finney, the original hash cache was actually a kind of 2 collisions. So there would be one hash to pick a fair random number, and then it would repeatedly work until it found another one that matched in the first some number of digits. And how Finney later had the idea and emailed me that you could make the first digits 0, and then you wouldn't need 2 hashes, and it would make it twice as fast to verify, and it would save a little bit, just twice as fast to verify. So I made that change in kind of a later revision of the software.
Okay, nice. And how is the idea related to Bitcoin system? Because many people tend to say that this is one of the more important precedents of Bitcoin itself. So how is this idea related to Bitcoin system?
So, I mean, all of those earlier, there were electronic cash systems that were deployed before Hashcash, of course, that didn't involve proof of work, like David Chaum's DigiCash. That was a company operating in the Netherlands, but it was a central server model. And people tried to bootstrap their demo server. They said that they would send you a few electronic cash tokens if you emailed them. And so people tried to sell things like t-shirts for these tokens, and they said there would only be 1 million. So they tried to sell things on the cypherpunks list to bootstrap it. And unfortunately, the DigiCash went bankrupt. And so the server went away and all the coins became worthless. You couldn't tell if they're valid or not. And so that caused people to think about how to make decentralized Dcash. And so that was before Hashcash, but after Hashcash, straight away, within days, people were thinking that Hashcash was somehow like digital gold and trying to think about how to use it as a way to bootstrap a decentralized electronic cash system. So to bring coins into creation by synthetic mining. But those designs were sort of incomplete or not fully automated. There would be human judgment involved still or something. And so, and that was true for B-Money and BitGold and also Hal Finney's RPAL. And so the idea to use mining seemed to occur to lots of people immediately. Lots of people who were interested in electronic cash. It seemed to cause multiple independent people to think that you could use this proof of work mechanism to mine coins. And Wei Dai wrote a description of B-Money where he said that the advantage is that you can have an electronic cash system without an interface to the banking world, without needing one. And that's interesting because you don't need permission. You can just build it in a decentralized way. So, apart from Hal Finney's RPAL, which itself was centralized but in a different way, I think nobody figured out how to control the rate of supply and inflation in the decentralized electronic cash system. Otherwise, many aspects of them were there. The Byzantine generals problem and even smart contracting, which Nick Szabo had proposed, a bit before then. So that's how it relates, and it's effectively like enormous. So the Hashcash used for email were small stamps, a minute's work, and people used it for other things like to create a cost for requesting a pseudonym. On some of the remailers had a persistent pseudonym model, replyable remailers. And so they used a bigger amount of work to reserve a pseudonym. So you could see maybe, it's just speculative, but the Byzantine generals problem, i.e. the coordination problem on a distributed system, where you want to stop the civil attack, where you would have, where each person could participate, but one person could pretend to be a million different people and claim an advantage. You want to prevent that. And so one way to do that would be if you look at that from scratch, you say, well, you need identities for the Byzantine generals problem because it works with identities. It has a defined number of participants. They can change, but you have to know how many there are to message them in that protocol. And so you could see that if there's a cost to create an identity, because anybody can create an identity at no cost, then using some work to create an identity would be a solution. And then you might come to realize that actually you don't need the identities. People can just, start mining and get coins in relation to how much work they did. So, I mean, I guess the point is that Bitcoin uses proof of work for 3 or 4 different properties. One is to create the coins. Another one is to solve this identity assumption baked into the BGP problem, and to make it economic effect so that there's an incentive to be honest in the system and get rewarded by mining coins rather than trying to undo transactions.
Well, that's really, I think that we can go to make a podcast exclusively on this topic, but let's continue. And with this relation in mind and all this background that you already told us, how would you respond to people that say that Bitcoin energy consumption is a waste of resource, that it's being a thought really popular this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think if people don't see the value of Bitcoin, like that it's a permissionless open network that anybody can join, then of course they're not going to, they're going to feel that anything spent on it is a waste of time. Like they won't buy it, they won't use it. If it uses energy, they won't like it. If it uses servers, they won't like it. So they're just generally disagreeable because they don't like it. But for people who do like it, they think that, permissionless global internet money is a huge innovation for the world and a huge value for society. Then, of course, they think, the fact that costs resources is fine because it delivers more value than the resources, sort of definitionally, or people wouldn't use it, right? If it was too expensive, they would use it less, kind of thing, and the price would fall. So I think it's sort of self-regulating. And I mean, another kind of argument, I at some point went and read all of Satoshi's posts on the Bitcoin Talk Forum when I was catching up with what was discussed before I got more actively involved. And he has a quote about that it's a bit like gold. So extracting gold, over thousands of years, the gold has been used a lot of resources, energy and manual labor and so forth. And yet the value that gold brought to the world economically was enormous and more than worth it. So you could see that for Bitcoin too. And also the cost of, producing a Bitcoin is reused after it's mined. So the earlier coins are mined much more cheaply. And so the average, mining cost of a coin is much lower than the total network value, like the number of coins currently circulating times the current price. The cost of mining them is far, far lower. And also, Bitcoin is looking for cheap power because people are trying to make a profit or maximize their profit when mining. And the cheapest power tends to be things like hydro and geothermal, which don't involve extraction and transport of fossil fuels, basically, right? So it gravitates to the cheaper power, and it doesn't care where it is. It could be in a remote location where there's not much demand for power, and so it's cheap.
Okay, and also related to Bitcoin mining and in relation to Blockstream recently receiving a new funding round, and this time from 210 millions. You are about to work through Bitcoin mining, making it more friendly, also more decentralized through Bitcoin mining hardware manufacturing that you are about to create. So can you tell us a little about this strategy, this idea on expanding your Bitcoin operation?
Yeah, so we've been doing mining for a while, and the motivation, I mean, it has some variability, but it can be quite profitable as well. And so we sort of did well in previous years with it, doing mining with the companies, with miners the company bought, and also doing mining, providing hosting for other people's miners and charging a hosting fee. So we do both of those things. And so one of our reasons to start that is that we wanted to see Bitcoin be more decentralized, because we think more decentralized Bitcoin is more valuable. It's more permissionless, more final, more censorship resistant, and more like a global fabric that can be depended on. So our thought was that, well, if each company of whatever size, small, medium, large, could do proportionally a small amount of mining, it would decentralize the network. And the total cost of buying the miners and operating the miners is quite a small percentage of the Bitcoin value, maybe 1% or something like that. And you put money in and you get money back, so you can make money on it too. So we thought, well, let's do some and let's help other people do it. And in terms of bringing a new miner, building a new miner, that's a similar thought process. So there are only so many different manufacturers in the world, and they tend to be concentrated in the China electronics manufacturing regions. Of course, the chips are made in other places, like Taiwan and so forth, right? So and there are fabs in China, but it depends on the process that people need to use. So, but the actual, the board and the miner manufacturer has tended to be a bit centralized in one geography. So it's not really which geography, it's just that it's all one. And so we thought it'd be good if there's a miner made, with supply chain and assembly in a different country or a different geography. So we're not making it all in one country, but we're doing it more internationally with less dependency on domestic hardware assembly in China.
Okay, and here we have a question related for the people that are looking this live. And what is the modular mining units that you are about to launch in Blockstream? Can you tell us a little about this too?
Yeah, so we have a few different mining sites, and one of them is already using a containerized mining design. So it's actually a reasonably efficient way to do things, to buy a shipping container and fit the electronics and cooling and miners into that. And so we've been using those at scale on our site near Atlanta in the US. And we have another site in Montreal in Canada and some other sites in development. But the modular mining unit is, those we operate ourselves, but the modular mining unit is a lower maintenance version so that we can put it in more remote locations where we don't have to have technicians manage it and maintain it as much. And the idea is to put it near to power sources and on a business model where the power company, or it could be like a new solar project, they buy the mining unit or lease it, and then Blockstream gives them a power contract where we will buy as much power as they have spare, because they have a direct project use, which is to provide power for a town or a factory or something like that. But they'll have surplus, and so any surplus, we'll give them a power contract where we'll buy it, and we could buy 100% of it, or we could buy 50%. It just depends what the demand is. And so the point is, because we are offering that service, it helps them be more profitable, and they need to present a business case to their financing commercial bank in order to get project financing to build something like that. And Bitcoin helps them do it, basically, because it helps us help them, because we can provide a steady demand whenever they need it.
Okay, nice. And that we have this question for the public, so nice to have your answer in the live stream. We are going back to Bybit, that is another show sponsor. So is also sponsored by Bybit. Bybit is a cryptocurrency exchange that provides trading and mining services as well as an API support for private and professional clients around the world. Launched in March 2018, Bybit is one of the fastest growing cryptocurrency exchange with over 2.5 million registered users. Bybit is committed to create a fair, transparent, and efficient exchange environment and offers 24/7 multi-language customer support to provide assistance in a very fast way. Derivatives products currently offered on Bybit platform are reverse perpetual contracts, USDT perpetual contracts, and BTC USDC and ETH USDT quarterly reverse future contracts. In addition, Simplex is already available on Bybit, so you can buy crypto on Bybit with your local currency. Learn more at bybit.com. Okay, that was the last sponsor message. Thanks, Mr. Back, for your patience. So I said that we are going back to HAL Times, but this time to talk about Satoshi. You tweeted today something about Satoshi and his anonymity. And back in the day, you also stated that his anonymity, he is not being a person that you can point, or a group of persons that you can find in some places in the world, is a Bitcoin feature. And as a Bitcoin privacy enthusiast and as a cryptographer and a privacy advocate, can you explain us why is that? Why do you state that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that many of the systems in the world have a hierarchy. And so, somebody in charge of it or with some influence over it. And so, and that becomes a system of influence. So, an authority will go to the leader of something or somebody with some influence over it and try to influence or coerce them into making a change, or at least to, think that they could influence or control a system by influencing that person, even if they maybe don't really have control. So, and I think it's more, I mean, I like to think about Bitcoin as something mathematical and discovered, as opposed to, something invented and led by somebody. So in practice, it's very decentralized, lots of different companies and individuals owning coins or mining, and lots of different independent developers and applications and companies building things on top of it. So in practice, it's sufficiently decentralized that nobody has any influence. So I think if there was a leader, let's say like Linux, for example, there's Linus Torvalds. I think he has quite a lot of influence, or certainly, people would go and lobby him if something came in Linux that a government didn't like, for example. So I think it helps to reinforce the concept that Bitcoin is a decentralized, digital scarcity-based commodity money, that there's no identified leader. And, even as a pseudonym, he disappeared many years ago, right? I'm not sure exactly when, but, 2012, something like that, right? He stopped responding, didn't write on the lists, on the forums anymore.
Yes, a feature, not a bug, not being able to name who Satoshi is. And I want to ask you again about the early days, because even when you have been mentioned in the Satoshi's white paper, you didn't jump as faster than, for example, how Finney did. And I want to ask you why. Were you working in something more exciting, and what did convince you to get into the Bitcoin train after that early days?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I noticed that, but so Hal was more of a person that would do experiments. So if something new would come or a new paper, he would read it and maybe implement it or describe it. So he would write up kind of experiment reports about, he wrote a report explaining a new version of David Chaum's electronic cash system, cut and choose. So he did lots of these things. And so I was, I read his explanation of trying it out. This was in January 2009. He wrote a summary of trying it out. Probably as part of that, he received the first transaction from Satoshi. So I was kind of content to read the report and try to understand it that way without feeling, the need to try it out in person, like run the software and try it. And so, and I think, doing things empirically is a way to, I think it does help to run things in a way that Hal does. It sometimes gives you new ideas or insights because running it gives you a direct experience rather than a theoretical experience. So what got me interested later was, I thought that Bitcoin was interesting, but had some kind of privacy limitations because the previous electronic cash systems like Chaum and Brands had very strong privacy. Even though they were centralized, the central entity had no mathematical way to distinguish one coin from another, and there was no, discernible. You couldn't see the coin history at all. The coin was fresh and anonymous every time it was used. So the fact that Bitcoin didn't have that, people that were interested in previous electronic cash protocols thought that was a limitation, and that's how I felt. So I got involved, and the other question mark in 2009 was, would it bootstrap? Would lots of people use it? Would it develop a value, like a price, so that you could use it to buy things? And remember, I participated in that T-shirt selling experiment with the DigiCash one, but still it seemed, open question whether it would bootstrap. So in 2013, I think it went over $1. Then at some point went over $100. And so I thought, oh, yeah, it is bootstrapping. Let's go look at some of the details, and maybe I can help improve the privacy, because that was something I worked on quite a bit before, electronic cash, crypto, like cryptography.
Okay, and exactly about this interest in privacy is related my next question, that is more about how do you see that things like Schnorr signatures or Taproot that will be activated soon in the protocol could be help in this regard, or maybe we are missing other pieces that will make Bitcoin more private and fungible in that way?
Yes, I think that Bitcoin is it's very security critical, so people try to make changes one at a time, and so you do see some incremental improvements on privacy over time, and I think that Schnorr is one of them, particularly both Schnorr and Taproot add some part of improved privacy. And the main way it improves privacy is it makes more different coin and wallet type transactions look indistinguishable. So today, if you look at the chain, and there are companies that analyze the chain to try to identify wallets and things like that. So they're kind of trying to break privacy basically, or identify people, or cluster wallets. So it helps, Schnorr and Taproot help reduce that as it gets adopted, because today, different types of wallets, a multi-sig wallet or a lightning channel or a single sig wallet, they're all going to look different. And so that can help the clustering. Whereas if Taproot is used, then, and the Schnorr, then a multi-sig looks the same as a single sig potentially, and if something is a Lightning channel, as long as it's closed in a collaborative way, you'll never know that it was a Lightning channel unless you were part of the channel. And so that is a incremental privacy improvement, I think.
Okay, and let's close with something related to these crypto times. I mean, crypto like cryptography, and you were part of the time where crypto was prohibited. Like we had these crypto wars, like. Crypto was considered like munition, and that was really bad to develop this kind of systems. But we are seeing like some move that seems to be kind of similar to that what happened in that days, but with Bitcoin. So, do you think that we can go through a similar process against Bitcoin that we had with cryptography? And do you think that it could be concerned? It could be something to be worried about?
Yeah, I mean, I think, some of this technology, and it was what I found interesting already with PGP and then Remila's anonymous cash and internet, popularization of the internet in the 90s, is that it would change the balance of power so that the individual would have more power and self-control, self-determination, as opposed to, government-controlled media and their ability to censor potentially would be eroded. And it seems like establishments don't like losing control, even though, they're supposed to work for the individual and the controls are for public safety in principle. So if the public doesn't want them, they should be able to, society should be able to choose its own balance. But I think the cypherpunk's observation was that if you want a balance to change to, respect individual rights, the only really way to do that is to just, implement the technology and for people to adopt it. And then the regulations and bureaucracy, the establishment power, their rules and regulations will catch up afterwards, because they will not typically, grant permission in a way that reduces their power or influence in the world. So I think that's why they were, reluctant about the internet and the freedom to publish and communicate directly, and why they may be a bit worried about, if Bitcoin displaces or becomes, very economically significant compared to government-controlled money, that might worry them. But I think it's, it's good economically for the world, and ultimately it's up to society what balance works. So bureaucracies can catch up afterwards with reality.
Yes, they used to do that. And well, thanks a lot for your time, Mr. Back. If people want to find your work or what are you working on, where they can follow you?
On Twitter at Adam3US, and Blockstream's different projects and products are on blockstream.com.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot again for your time. It was a really great pleasure to have this conversation with you, and also thanks to the people that have been with us in this live stream. You can find this podcast in your favorite aggregation afterwards. And well, that was a really great conversation about POW, proof of work, Bitcoin mining, and Bitcoin itself, and also about history. Thanks a lot for doing this with us, and have a great Sunday, Mr. Back.
Thank you.